Hello, everyone. This is Shanei Born, Alejandro Bratti, and CJ Kuzler from the Believe in Yourself, Believe in Your Business team, and we welcome you to the Spanglish World Network on Singo TV channel 250 and 251. So please remember to download both the Singo TV app on the respective app stores on iOS and Android devices. And while you download, make sure that you rate and leave a comment. The app is free. And Singo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire and Fire Sticks, Roku and Roku Sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 and forward. Dr. Ruth, it is amazing to have you with us, and we just welcome you to the stage.
Oh, thank you for having me on the show. It's a real pleasure for having me. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
It's such a
Ruth.
pleasure.
Just to let you know, we always start with your story from where are you coming, what happened to start to believe in yourself. So tell us a little bit about your life before you really started to believe in yourself. And I know that we're going to enjoy this program today because you are very focused on the thing that I really love in the mindset and how to improve also the brain health, not only the mindset, but if the hardware is not working, you can find ways to fix it, and there is ways, and you are one of those that are really helping people to improve. So I am really glad that you're here with us today, Ruth.
Thank you, Alejandro. So believing in myself, I guess the journey started, well, it starts from birth, doesn't it? But I'll pick the key turning point in my life, which was when I was working in the corporate world at one of the big four in the city in London. And I was thought I was on track for promotion to senior manager. I was working really hard throughout the year, giving up my time, giving up my weekends, giving up my sleep, wanted to build a family at the same time. So I was trying to make babies at the same time too. And it came to the end of the year, and unfortunately had a miscarriage throughout that period of the year. And very shortly after having the miscarriage, I was told by the firm that I was put on a performance review, which was completely unexpected because I'd met all of the hard targets the firm had set me. And as part of the feedback in the performance review, they told me I had no emotional intelligence. And it made me feel a complete failure, both emotionally from the feedback, to be told that you wouldn't tell anybody they've got no intelligence. That's just not the sort of thing you say to people. But they said it to me, using the EQ, which becomes so popular these days. And I also felt biological failure because obviously I'd had a miscarriage. So the trauma really stacked, and I focused all of my energy and effort on trying to prove to the firm that I was worthy, that I was enough. And the way the firm system worked was that not only did they put you on a performance review, but they told you to write your own performance plan, and then they would assess you against your proposed performance plan. So it was like a double whammy in terms of you not performing enough, because then they would assess your performance against your performance plan, and whether you'd written the right one. So I, as I said, I put all my energy into that, and none of my energy into looking after myself and actually dealing with the grief and the trauma of the miscarriage. And I started spiraling downhill very quickly. The environment of the performance review was incredibly toxic. And I ended up having suicidal thoughts. I just didn't feel enough. And so I ended up having to sign myself off sick from the firm to focus on my health and well-being. And they actually assigned me a positive psychologist, which was not really what I wanted. I wanted somebody to help me with cognitive behavioural therapy, because that's what I thought would serve me going forward. I wanted someone to help me focus on the skills I needed to level up. And I realised actually that I could level up myself and reach out for coaching, and that's what I did. The firm said I wasn't high enough grade to get coaching, so I paid for it myself as I had my own business prior to joining the firm. And it was the best decision I ever made. I actually got myself an emotional intelligence coach and went on a high performance coaching journey. Excuse me. And that's when I discovered brain health and the work by Dr. Daniel Amen that Alejandro, you know very well too, as a brain health coach. And really joined the dots between the work I'd done as a PhD student on medical imaging and where I wanted to go, which was back into the medical space and learn about how I can help people get the best out of themselves and really harness their full potential. And so I went on this amazing transformational journey, understood all of the things that I could fix and the things that were outside of my control to fix, which was the environment I was working in ultimately. And so I kind of looked at it and like, you can either change the environment or you can change the environment you're in. And I chose the latter. So I left the firm, which was the best decision I made. And then certified as a coach, a high performance coach, and then subsequently brain health professional.
You went too fast because you are going like, okay, tell us a little bit how was that process, how you, because it was very traumatic what you are telling us right now,
Yeah.
like talking about like having a problem with my corporate business that I have been working, I don't know for how many years and trying to be the best. Suddenly you have something personal that is starting to affect your corporate also. And you feel like everything is falling apart, like your life completely is falling apart. What happened with your husband also? What happened with the people around you? How was that?
Yeah. So it really did feel like all the blocks were tumbling down because initially, prior to being put on the performance review, I was pulled off the project that I was working on, which actually was the lifeline to keep me focused. Ultimately, as a distraction away from dealing with the trauma and the grief of having a miscarriage. And so, immediately being taken off the project, I felt a failure, that I couldn't, I lost that lifeline that I needed to help me through the personal situation, which I was hoping work would offer me. And then I suddenly almost had a work miscarriage. That particular piece of work that I was doing was taken away from me. And then obviously.
And quick question in regards of the miscarriage, it was at how many weeks or months?
Oh, so it wasn't very long. I was only 7 weeks in, which was, we say to ourselves, oh, I shouldn't feel so bad. I've hardly gone into pregnancy for very long, but the reality is your body goes on a huge hormonal surge. In the first couple of weeks of pregnancy. There's massive alterations that take place both physically and emotionally and psychologically, and then suddenly that's where there's a really massive surge over that period of time, and then suddenly the tap gets turned off and everything gets turned off. So women who have been in that similar term in the first term of pregnancy experience a huge emotional trauma from the experience because of the massive shift in hormonal changes as well, and obviously being a first time mum, I had all my hopes and dreams tied into that child, which many of us do, and they were all, they all disappeared when I had that miscarriage. I had started looking at baby things and building baby lists and everything, and then it was just suddenly all taken away. And the weekend before I had the miscarriage, we just told family that I was pregnant. So then I had the whole telling
I
family.
understand you completely well because we lost a baby also with my wife, and I understand pretty well what you are saying. And And I know you what you are saying, even if it's 6 weeks and you are like waiting for that baby and you already have even a name for him or for her,
Yeah.
it's like you have like everything planned.
Yeah.
How now that you can see that moment from another perspective, how do you feel that affected in all the other areas, or how they were connected, or you feel that they were connected? Because at the end you
Oh,
felt like everything was falling, but do you feel
no,
that was
actually, it
because
was a real
that was
gift. It was a
exactly?
real gift, and the baby was called Bubble.
Oh, nice.
um, and it was a real gift because actually I realised that I wasn't creating the right environment to create a baby,
Wow.
because the stress that I was experiencing at work wasn't conducive to creating a nurturing womb environment. It was incredibly unlikely I was ever going to have a successful um, pregnancy term, because of the cultural environment that I was in, and the huge stresses that were placed on me to perform. Giving up everything, giving up sleep, giving up time at weekends, people expecting you to do things late at night was just not conducive to being, having that calming environment that you'd
Mm,
prefer your a child to develop in. And
yeah.
also personally, I had literally no clue what it took at the time. I just thought, well, you do the deed and the baby starts being made. I had no clue on the importance of optimizing your health and well-being,
Mm,
in the context of creating the right environment to grow a child.
mm,
And I didn't have the right habits in place myself personally to do it either. So actually, it was a real blessing, and a real, the whole experience, although it was horrific at the time, it was an essential part of my personal growth, and also a part of me creating the right environment to have a child, because I then paid attention to myself, and to get optimizing my energy, my health and well-being, and spent time looking in the mirror and understanding, okay, this is not who I want to be, this is not how I want to show up,
and
um,
quick
and I need to make some changes myself.
And quick question, Ruth. And thank you for sharing this because this is really really powerful, and traumatic at the same time. I know that there are two ways that we transform our lives. One
Mm.
of them is through trauma, when we have a trauma, and the other one could be when we start to be aware and start to do repetition to change the paradigms that we have in our mind and all the things that we
Mhm.
have in our mind. So how much time do you think you needed to take to understand from the point where, like, okay, I am losing my kid and everything is falling apart, to now I start to understand that it was a blessing, and now you started to find what are the areas that you needed to take care of to start to, okay, now I have an environment to have another kid and to start to
Mhm.
work on this.
Yeah, so it took me about 2 years, to be fair, to turn everything around, and obviously we kept trying, but I had to go on this transformational journey. So when I made the decision to leave the firm and hand my notice in, I committed to myself to become the fittest I've ever been, and I didn't put any figures on it. Apart from, I really wanted to get to the weight that I'd weighed myself about 10 or 15 years earlier, and I still had the printout of this weight that was my optimal weight for my age and my height and everything. And I thought, I'd love to get to that. And I was 12 kilograms, 14 kilograms over, and 27 pounds over that weight. And I didn't like myself when I looked in the mirror. I didn't like seeing what I saw. That wasn't the person that I wanted to be. That wasn't the true me.
Mm,
And so I went on this transformational journey, changed my diet. Obviously, not I was using food as self-care in the wrong way. So previous to going on this transformation, I was using chocolate cake and lattes to get through the afternoon. and then alcohol in the evening to numb the pain, and I could get through half a bottle in an evening quite easily, sometimes a bottle. So it wasn't, that was my self-medication, and it just really wasn't serving me in any way, shape or form. So through focusing on reading the work done by Dr. Daniel Amen and reading the book Change Your Brain, Change Your Life, I went, I implemented the steps that needed to be implemented, and I lost 27 pounds in 7 months. And by the March the following year, I was the fittest I'd ever been. So within a year, I was at my optimal weight, and actually that's when I fell pregnant.
Wow. And tell me what were the other things? Because one is the book. You started to realize, okay, I have to change something. Something is going wrong here. It was the book. You told us also about high performance coaching that you took. It was at that time or was later? Or
no, it was during that period. So I had a coach during that period, and obviously having let go of working at the firm and then rebranding my business into a coaching business, I had the financial buffer and capacity to really take the time to focus on me personally, and that's what I did. And so yes, it was during that time period of restarting my business again that I was able to do the work, and I honestly, I remember a friend of mine, Julie, who might be listening. She posted that she was pregnant in January, and we were away skiing, and it was really upsetting for anybody who's had a miscarriage. You know how upsetting it can be when you see people posting about them getting pregnant. It's really heartbreaking because you just long for it to be you. And it was over at the New Year's time, and I was crying my eyes out over the fact that I wasn't able to do it myself personally. And I just said to myself, I'm just going to use the people that I serve from a coaching perspective are going to be my children, and I'm going to be happy with that. That's going to be my children in my life, and I will do the best for the people that I serve, and that's my family. That's my family. Because when you become a coach and you join the coaching community, as you know, we all get to know each other, and it becomes like a big family. Anyway. So I just thought, well, I'll just accept that's how it's going to be. And lo and behold, my coach at the time, Diane, who was my emotional intelligence coach, she said, when you stop trying, it will happen. And lo and behold, it did. So unexpectedly, my husband and I were able to realise a dream of ski touring across the French Alps in April of that year. And it turns out it wasn't just me and my husband ski touring, but there was a passenger on board. And 8 months later, our daughter Lily was born. So that was her first ski trip in the womb.
wow.
Nice.
That is amazing. I'm so happy for you guys. And why do you think that your coach told you that when you stop trying, it'll just happen? Do you think it's like that with most of the things in life?
Do you know, I think we put an enormous amount of stress on ourselves to will things to happen. And often we just have to let things run their course. Especially when it comes in, if I think back to the experience I had, when you're going through it, you think, oh my goodness, this is the most terrific thing that's ever happened to me. But actually it was the right thing to happen to me, because if it hadn't have happened to me, I wouldn't be here now today sharing my story and hopefully, inspiring other people to know that it's okay to not be okay, and it's important to do the work to help yourself get better. But that miscarriage is a really difficult thing too, and you're not alone in that journey, and you don't have to shoulder that trauma yourself. There is support out there to unchain your pain in that context. And and there is hope. There is hope. And in terms of letting things happen, I think now when people say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't make this meeting, or I can't do this, or I can't do that," and your plans for the day change, I never look at it as a disappointment. I always look at it as an opportunity, because I sort of say, well, how can I make the best of this day? Why has this happened to me? Get curious with it. And what can I now do in that day to be more productive than I would have been had that change not happened? Because change is there to challenge us, and we can either accept the challenge and run forth with it and leverage it to best effect to serve us, or we can not do that, and then it doesn't serve us in the way that it could do.
I will ask you to do the same questions again, just to everybody that is listening to like understand exactly, because I think that they are really powerful.
So what, in terms of change? Yeah. So I mean, we need to acknowledge that change is a good thing, and we need to harness the power of that opportunity and pivotal moments in our lives. Yes, there can be horrendously traumatic pivotal moments, whether that's a childhood moment, like Alejandro, we discussed on my show, or whether it's a moment in your life in adulthood, but it's looking at how you can leverage that moment to achieve growth. So we talk about post-traumatic growth, and some people really grow out of a trauma, and other people unfortunately don't, and often they're not able to grow because they haven't had the right support, they haven't equipped them, haven't got the right tools or techniques to help them do that pivot in a positive way. And I think it's just really important that we all have really hard points in our lives, but there are ways in which you can get the right support to pivot forward and upward with that experience.
And with your knowledge that you have right now about this post-traumatic, how we try to hide the traumas that we go through, and we don't want to continue. What did you see in yourself, maybe in this case or in another case, how you started to like try to avoid, okay, I did this, I had this problem, this trauma in myself, uh, affected in other areas, but suddenly it's like I have to live, I have to continue, and you start to forget about that. How did you see something of that, or are you continue
But in
working
my
on
experience, life experiences. So I'll take the one with my father. So when I witnessed my father's death, which was very sudden, and I witnessed the unfortunately the turning off of his life support machine, I had to park the grief to support my mum, who was there at the time too. And so I didn't focus on me. I focused on my mum, and helping her get through the crisis that she was in. And it was really difficult for me to function properly, actually, because throughout the whole year, certainly 8 months post that experience, which was trauma, which was trauma and grief, I was pretty much crying every day, because of the loss and the experience, and trying to function effectively for my mum, who was in a really dark place, and really was really struggling with the loss of her husband. And it wasn't until I asked for support, and I did that through havening, and had a havening coach to help me, that I was really able to unchain my pain from that experience and let go of the trauma of that day, and could talk about it within a week without having a complete meltdown, an emotional meltdown. And through that, experience, because it was so powerful. When I went from a distress rating of a 7 out of 10 to a 2 out of 10 in under an hour of coaching, I thought, well, we were in COVID, just going into COVID at the time. And I thought, this is just what people really need to unchain their pain from past trauma or an unhelpful experience, whether that's present or past. And so immediately certified as a practitioner, and then focus my energy on helping other people unchain their pain, people who have PTSD, trauma from domestic abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, rape, car crashes, you name it, all sorts of different problems that other therapies have been unable to really address effectively. And what you find often with therapy, certainly talk therapy, is that it can actually make the situation worse for some people, because you have to relive the experience through talking about it. And often no one wants to talk about a really traumatic experience. They just want to let go of the emotional pain that's tied into it, or the physical pain, or the sensory pain, the way that in which you respond from a sensory perspective, or the thoughts or the images. You just want to get it out of your head, without having to have the conversation about it, because that can be hugely traumatic in its own right. And that's what havening does, as do some other therapies like eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, EMDR. But it's incredibly powerful, and it was so powerful when I was certifying. I was able to help my mum with her trauma of witnessing my dad's death without her even talking to me about it. I said, "Oh, I'd love to help you, Mum, but you don't have to." We did things from her past that she wanted to let go of, but we had to address the elephant in the room, which was my dad's death, and she was able to do it content free, so she didn't have to say anything to me about the experience. And within an hour, she looked about 20 years younger. All of the tension that we hold in our face from from the traumatic experience, because our skin is like our third brain, so we hold this tension that we have in our mind. Often we express it.
And one thing that comes to my mind with what you're saying is heal people, heal others, hurt people, hurt others. And sometimes I have a question, because I know that we're talking about pain, and there are some pains that we can, like, yeah, I know that I had a miscarriage, and I know that I have this pain about this. But for example, yesterday we were talking about another thing in my life, like happened when I was 7 years old. And I can be thinking that I already passed through that, and some years ago happened that, and I am here. I already fix a lot of things. I already grow. How you can know that that is still creating a pain for you? In my case, I realized that was creating a pain in myself. But how you can help others to understand that there are some things in your past, in your childhood, that maybe is still affecting you in other ways, and you see that that is another thing in the future.
So often it's the way that you respond. In terms of the 5 pillars of brain health, which I talk about, which is your feelings, your actions, your connections, your thoughts, and your surrounding. Remember, by the mnemonic facts, we say, let's look at the facts. It's your actions or your behaviors that inform you that you go into a certain situation, whether it's work or anything, and something triggers you in a way that isn't normal.
Mm.
and you get curious with it. So you either just accept that's who you are, which is often not the case. You are triggered by something that happened to you historically, or you start to get curious with it and you go, do you know what? That's not how I want to behave. Why am I behaving that way in this environment? Why is this person? Why is this object? Why is this smell? Why is this scene? Why is this scene triggering me? in a way that's unhealthy and not supporting me. And that's when it's time to really get curious and get support to understand where the root cause of that trigger is. Now, it could be that it could be in the moment. You could be the environment you're actually in, as it was for me, is that the environment is toxic, and so therefore you need to leave the environment that you're in order to fix the problem, in the same way as if you're in a toxic room or a room filled with asbestos. The fact that you have asbestosis doesn't mean it's your fault. You need to leave the room that's given you the problem. So it is the same sort of principle. But there are, obviously, you could have been in a place historically where you were struggling, and let's use asbestosis. Gosh, I've created a difficult word to say for myself, haven't I? And you struggle with your breathing, and it's triggered by the type of room you're in, because that was the same style of room that you were in when you got asbestosis. And so it's about understanding where the triggers have come from. And sometimes as a child you might not even know, because you don't have the language as to why you're behaving the way you are, because when the experience happened as a child, your brain wasn't developed enough for you to formulate the words to associate the negative experience with what you witnessed. Classic is domestic abuse or child abuse, or being molested. And obviously in your case you got lost, and your parents didn't realize that you weren't in the car. But it's understanding that your behavior as an adult in certain environments is not normal, and you might not be able to put a finger on it because of the way your brain has evolved. But that doesn't matter. If you get the right therapy, you can still unchain your pain and unchain the emotional content, because you wouldn't have the verbal content, but you can unchain the feelings. You don't have to have words associated with it, because they can show up physically. Feelings can be expressed as, tightness in your chest, or, the tension in your throat. You can help remove those feelings where they're expressed in a different way to being expressed verbally. And you can do the same with sensory information that's encoded within the trauma that's experienced through different techniques. So there is always a way in which you can go backwards, and you might not even know how to do it, but it's about getting the right therapist or the right coach to guide you and find that root cause and pull up the root.
Yeah, and I wanted to ask you that because I know that some people can be like, I don't understand what is happening here, but at the same time, I am suffering and I am not really having the results that I want. So that's why I was asking you that. Like, okay, so you need to understand that this type of therapy, you need somebody that is expert on this, that knows how to treat it, and not only like any coach. Like, because right now that it's difficult also, like there is millions of coach, and I am not saying that each of them can be good in one area, but you need to understand if it's the right one for you, and
That's right.
that's
And
something that's important.
absolutely, and it can be quite, what I found with coaching, just learning the basics of coaching, is it can be sometimes quite dangerous and traumatic, because you and I'll explain, because people trust you, which is really important as a coach. And they trust you to be able to tell you their deepest, darkest secrets. And so sometimes you may open, and Richard Martin talks about this on my show, is you may open the Pandora's box of that person's experience. But as a coach, you might not have the tools yourself personally to know how to manage the outflow from Pandora's box. Once the lid is taken off the pressure pot, as often coaches don't know how to manage the release that happens, and so the person can easily go into a complete meltdown because they've kept this lid on for years and years and years, and like a pressure pot, it's been boiling away and bubbling away for ages, and you keep tightening the lid a bit tighter, and you keep tightening it a bit tighter and hoping that it will stay in, and then suddenly someone lets the lid off, which could be your coach, and you just don't know how to deal with the emotional release that occurs. So it's really important, which is why I trained in what I did, is to make sure you've got someone that you can reach out to, whether it's your coach that's trained or somebody else, to help you manage the release that you may experience when your coach takes off the lid of the pressure pot, so that you can actually unchain your pain and not fall into a deep abyss as part of the coaching process.
So it's really interesting, Ruth. You talk about like these tools and techniques and not doing it the standard way of sharing through words. I'm wondering if maybe you could give an example of maybe one of these strategies that you might walk through with someone that, like you shared with your mother, that she didn't have to share the verbal outcome of her tragedy, but that you were able to walk her through that without having to necessarily go through a verbal dialogue. What might that look like?
Yeah, so the way so I'll talk about the technique that I use just briefly, which you can use in day-to-day life, and it's called havening. And so havening uses the power of human touch, which we all possess. This ability is all inbuilt into us from birth to emotionally regulate ourselves, and we need physical human touch from our parents or our carer to emotionally regulate us as children. It's a necessary part of our human survival and development, that nurturing physical touch to calm us down. And when you have children who are hyperactive, you may have to restrain them, but that helps actually calm them down. So you may, as a parent, find yourself, or maybe as a child, you may remember your mum stroking your face, or stroking the cheek to make you go to sleep, or you may have found yourself just having a nice hug from your mum or your dad may have been brilliant in your life, or from your partner, helps you regulate yourself. And we often bury our head in our hands, don't we, when we have like something that's really difficult. We just go, oh, and then we start doing this. Oh, my dad used to do this a lot. And that's our natural response, to use human touch to generate what we call delta waves. And these are brain waves that are generated in a deep sleep. And when we have or in a delta wave state within our mind, that's when our brain does a restorative activity and reshuffles the memories in our mind. And what this deep sleep state does, that by generating these delta waves through the power of human touch, is it sends calming chemicals to our brain. And so when someone has experienced a trauma, at the time the trauma takes place, there's very high frequency brain waves called gamma waves that are sent, so very high, go into our brain. They send chemicals like cortisol and adrenaline to put us into this fight, flight, freeze, or defensive rage response. And at the time it sends these fast wave brain waves deep into our mind, called the amygdala, which is our fight, flight response part of our brain. The amygdala plugs onto the surface of the brain cells in there, what we call AMPA receptors, and these act as a short circuit. So every time you experience something similar to the trauma that you had, say it was a lion came near you and you have to you feel a need to run away at another time, those receptors allow you to do it quickly. It's part of our survival technique. And the way we do it with havening, it's just the same or similar principle with EMDR. we ask people to activate their trauma in their mind, and they don't have to say anything about it. And then they apply human touch, and with EMDR, it's eye movement. And that generates these calming delta waves. And what that does is, because these AMPA receptors are active, because your brain has gone into the state and it's brought that memory to the forefront of your mind, what it does is these calming delta waves send the calming chemicals like oxytocin to your brain cells, and it actually unglues the short circuit, those AMPA receptors, and sends them permanently back into your brain cell. So the effect of that is any outflow, any response that you had encoded, emotional response, cognitive response, including thoughts, autonomic responses, heart rate increase, and change in breath state, and also somatosensory response, tensing of your muscles, or any weird sensations that get encoded are removed, or often totally removed, but it will depend on other traumas that have similar. So you think of a trauma tree. If your trauma takes root early on in your life and you have similar experiences that are related to that trauma that are also traumatic, then if you're only recalling one event, you'll only remove that one event. You won't remove all of the other related events. So you have to be quite clever as a havening practitioner, or as a therapist, to help people let go of all of the trauma. And obviously, the more layers of trauma people have, the longer it will take. But I've noticed people who have done content free, like my mum did, which was recalling one singular event, is you recall it and then you apply the technique, and you need to do it with a therapist. Please do not do this by yourself, but you do, and you're guided by the therapist. So they'll ask you about what are you feeling, and you work through the feelings that you're experiencing. And often we start with distractions. So I'll ask the person to rate themselves out of 10 in terms of distress rating, which is what I talked about at the beginning. And they'll give themselves a rating out of 10. And sometimes it can be 10, or people say 12, and you can see the whole body goes into a state, into a response state associated with that traumatic experience. Then after the distraction is finished, and they work through distraction techniques such as singing songs and stuff like that, we can do all sorts of things. Often I take people away to a safe place that they feel safe in their mind. You assess their distress rating after that, and you see what the reduction is. And people can go from, in a group context, I've had people go from a 7 to a 1 in under an hour at a group level. It depends on how easy it is for that particular person to let it go. If it's related to other traumas, it can be a bit harder, but it's completely dependent on the person and the traumatic experience or experiences that they've had in their life. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely, that's incredible.
Yeah, so it's really powerful. And just as an example, and Alejandro, I'll send you thank you for being on my show. I'll send you a coupon code. But as an example of how good it is my daughter Lily. She suffered trauma from birth because she was born by C-section. And I thought, well, I'm going to try this on my daughter because she was struggling with sleeping from birth. She was having nightmares and stuff like that. And I applied the technique to her as a parent while she was asleep and having her nightmares, and talked to her in a calming way. And her nightmares from that birthing experience went away within a couple of days.
Wow.
And sleep was so much better.
I need that right now.
Well, I'll send you I'll say. So my daughter Lily now has her own course to teach parents. We're teaching parents to teach their kids how to use this as a day-to-day stress and anxiety tool, so that you can, as a parent, you learn how to reduce your day-to-day stress and anxiety. Simple things like driving a car and someone cuts you up, you can apply the technique whilst driving, because you can, as long as you're safe to drive with one hand on the wheel, and calm yourself down really quickly. by the application of human touch. So it's incredibly powerful. Everybody ought to be learning this as part, primary
And I have a question, Ruth, in regards, because I know that, for example, here a lot of the people that we are talking to are business owners and entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And I know that sometimes we try, as business owners or entrepreneurs, we try to, okay, this is something that is not related to my business, so I don't want to talk about that. My family is another thing. I don't want to touch about that thing. But that is something that is affecting everybody. Doesn't matter what is the position that you have right now, where are you right now. So what is your experience that you have had right now with any entrepreneur that you have been working? I know that I am not asking for any name, but more in regards of, okay, trauma that maybe they are already a high performer, and that it's they are happy that I am a high performer, but at the same time they are putting a lot of stress in themselves to improve and to be better and better and better, and they are in a rat race that they can't really succeed, and suddenly at the end it's for a trauma that happened in the childhood.
Absolutely. Yeah, so often people struggle with their own personal identity. So they struggle to show up as their authentic self. That's a common one, where they have grown up in an environment of needing to please other people because they haven't felt enough. And that's driven them throughout their life. But they get to a point where they don't know who they truly are, and they struggle to let go of something inside of them that is holding them back from knowing what their authentic self is. And it's often because they're trying to be who they're not based on past childhood trauma. And it could be something that they have diminished in their mind, because we compare ourselves to everyone else, don't we? So we say, well, this person had a major trauma, so I shouldn't be feeling I shouldn't be feeling this way because I only had this little trauma. But the thing is if it's affecting you, trauma is trauma. It doesn't matter how big or how small it is. If it's affecting your day-to-day life in a way that's not supportive of you growing, then it's a trauma that needs to be unchained to help you grow effectively. It's like having a bungee cord. I kind of analogous to a bungee cord tied, and you're running forward and forward and forward in life, and then suddenly you get yanked right back by this trauma that is you can't put your finger on it, you can hardly grab hold of it, but something is stopping you, and it's taking the time personally to unravel that, go back in time in a way that is supportive rather than destructive, which is really important. You get the right therapist or the right coach to help you let go in a supportive way rather than run away that is destructive, and then you have to rebuild yourself. It's doing it in a supportive way.
Wow.
Does that answer your question?
Yeah, completely. No, that was exactly, and the idea behind really, once again, to tell everybody is you are feeling like connection. Okay, you start to think like, oh, I remember this trauma. I remember this. Sometimes we don't want to tell everybody that I am going through a trauma or I had a trauma that happened a lot of time ago. But really, everybody has had one type of trauma sometime in their life.
Yeah.
If you didn't deal well with that, you need to check and to see if that is something that you need to fix. And sometimes can be something that it's very easy to see, and everybody is looking at that, and everybody saying to you like, okay, this is the trauma that you have, and that's why you need to do something about it, or you have to forget about it. No, you have to work on that. And even if it's something that you don't really remember, or you think that happened in your life but you didn't do really anything about it, there is something that you need. And that's why we bring today Ruth, and this was amazing. Your call today was amazing, helping people to open their eyes to see that if you don't work on that and you don't have the right person to help you improve with the right techniques to improve, of course a lot of people can help you to open it. And I know sometimes some of our traumas, our mother or our wife or our, I don't know, the person that is very near us is very, they are like the best guys to help us to open it very quickly. And it's like suddenly you react and it triggers something bad.
It's interesting that you say that, Alejandro, because I was just thinking about, like, how we talk about believe in yourself and believe in your business. And we believe there's an intricate tie between our personal and our professional life. People who say it's not personal, it's just business. I had someone say that to me some time ago, and I learned along the way that that's just not true. Everything does become personal. So I am curious how we can work with our partners, the people in our lives, the people we love, and the people that we do business with, whether our clients or people who have us as clients, when we trigger one another and we bring out not necessarily always the best in one another, how can we operate in such a way to be supportive and to bring healing?
Well, I think the first thing is to acknowledge that you've been triggered. If you take the parent situation or a work situation, and somebody's really wound you up, whether it's a child or a work colleague, is to acknowledge the emotion that you're experiencing, and to take action to let the emotional wave dissipate in a constructive way. So it could be a simple action as to, I just need to take time out. And you might just need to go to the toilet for a few minutes and just sit there and calm yourself down. Or you might want to do some havening or some deep breathing, or go out in nature is another great thing to do. Is just to down regulate your emotional response, whatever is going to serve you and not hurt you. So drinking alcohol is not serving you to down regulate yourself. So you need to do something that loves you back. So that would be the first thing. But if acknowledge first that you are in a place of discomfort and you need to find a place of comfort psychologically, it is important to do. And the way to do that, to learn how to do that effectively, because we don't often check in with our emotions, is to take the time to check in with your emotions and to get curious with them and not furious with them. Often we ignore them and we try and bury them, and actually that amplifies them. It amplifies them in our mind, and it also amplifies them in our body, and they leak out at some point later in life, whether that's an explosive release or whether it's a release from a chronic illness. Often fibromyalgia is a classic, and also cancer can be attributed to people not dealing with past emotional trauma that has been expressed through chronic disease or illness.
Oh, it's very insightful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, we are at the end of the show. I know for everybody that is listening to us, if you want to reach Dr. Ruth Allan because you need some help, you were triggered by this conversation today, just let us know. She is in LinkedIn. What way they can connect with you, Ruth?
Sure. So they can find me anywhere on LinkedIn, message me on LinkedIn, connect with me there, or any social media, which is Ruth Mary Allan. Or if they want to arrange a call with me, go to my website, ruthmaryallan.com/connect, and they can arrange a free 50-minute consultation to discuss their needs.
Oh, awesome. Thank you very much. This was amazing. Thank you for your wisdom and being so open and so vulnerable. That was amazing. Thank you very
You're
much.
most welcome. Thank you for having me, Bo.
No, it was amazing. And thank you, CJ. So, everybody, this show can be also heard on the Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out spanglishworld.ca for all the news and programming. It's Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, and leave it. Thank you, Ruth. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.